just to let you know, thanks very much for the warm welcome, everybody. I've got my colleague sat next to me, Oliver, so he's going to be picking up anything in the chat. I'm also delighted that one of my clients, Chris Gearan, has joined us. So what we wanted to do is to make the session interactive. So I'm going to be asking Chris some questions at the end of this. We thought we'd make it interactive. But please, as we're going through, if you've got any questions, can you put them in the chat facility? And what I've also done at the end, I spoke to Tom about this, but I built some extra value into the slides. So the theme of today's presentation is really the importance of goal setting in building a sales plan. And thanks so much for the build up and the expectations at the start of this. I just wanted to give you a bit of context. We work with clients who are startups in the tech space, right up into the global space. But what we see is a really common theme when organizations are trying to build a sales plan, that they lack goals. So I'm going to relate what I'm going to talk about into our own experience, what we see working with clients. And I think if you take one key takeaway from this session today, it's the importance of actually having a robust plan. What I've also done at the end is that if you want to link to a couple of our downloadable assets, you can go away and work with this. There is a link. Oliver is our tech guru, so actually he's built in, so you can there's a QR code at the end if you just want to take a screenshot of it, and you can download it directly from the QR code. And if the QR code works, it was my idea, and if it doesn't, it's Oliver's idea. So what I'm going to do is there are a couple of videos in here. The videos have got actors. Now, if anybody has done a bit of research on SalesStar, you'll actually see that our head office is in New Zealand, in Auckland. So you'll actually, when you're seeing a couple of these short videos, which are the importance of demonstrating some of the learning points, you will pick up on some Kiwi accents as well. So if the Kiwi accents cause you a bit of offence, I apologise for that. So I'm going to go straight into playing one of the videos, and you'll see that the learning point is exaggerated to demonstrate a point. But the key thing is, most businesses, when we go and meet with them, they'll say we've got a business plan, we've got a marketing plan. But when you start really drilling down to say, have you got some sales goals? They don't really have any sales goals. So I'm going to share with you, the first slide is really a video. I'm going to talk you through this, and you will see there's two contrasting perspectives on actually having a sales strategy and a sales plan. The characters in this video are called Mark Drain and Penny Wright, and you probably work out which Mark Drain is now.
High performance strategy? I'll tell you what my strategy is. Those clowns have got to make more calls. Like, I required 20 cold calls from each of them every morning, yeah? They can do their follow-ups and account management in the afternoon. The more appointments they get, the more quotes they'll do. Our pricing is competitive, and we'll discount if we have to get the deal. Yeah? That's my strategy. And if they don't do it, I'll get someone who will. All right, you lot, how you doing with those cold calls? You've got to do your quota, and then you gotta hit the road and sell. That's how you run a sales team. Show them who's boss. All that strategy stuff, it's a total waste of time. Those fancy plans just gather dust on the shelves. Like, you've just got to get your team in front of people and do as many quotes as possible. Yeah? It's all a numbers game.
High performance and strategy? Well, this is crucial if we're going to get high performance results. Design the strategy first, before the team goes charging out there into task mode. I mean, an army doesn't charge unless there's a strategy first. Otherwise, they'll just go in different directions. Of course, our strategy has to be based on best practice too, which is why we engage the help of SalesStar to help us design it. Design first, then execute for high performance.
So a very different approach from the two people I sort of interviewed there. And the key thing is, and I really love what Penny says, that you wouldn't see an army just charge into battle without having a strategy. You have to have goals. You have to have clear goals for your business, and you have to have clear personal goals. So if you're running a small business, and here's the thing that I love dealing with small business owners, most people who go into business didn't go into business to have to sell. And I hear that comment all the time. But actually, as you'll see, I want to share with you a couple of things at the end which will help you win more work, win more clients. You have to have a plan. And the world has been turned upside down in the last the last couple of years, particularly with the pandemic and the impact of lockdowns. And actually, most people didn't have a plan B going into lockdown. There are some businesses that have won really well and have expanded during the last 2 years. There's some that have gone into decline. But the key thing is about having some goals, and it's about having some objectives. And it takes time and it takes effort to do those things. But without a goal and without a vision, you're just going to meander and you're gonna drift. And setting goals is so important, and understanding the metrics which go behind those goals are so important as well. So if you want to build a scalable business, or you want to protect your revenue, you've got to have a plan, and you've got to invest some time in designing that plan. And as you'll see, these are things that you can actually do on your own. And it was interesting, just to relate this back to what Charles was saying about, having 4 pillars and engaging with the local business community, getting more people involved. Most sales plans are actually driven by data. So knowing your numbers, and I know Chris is on the call, and I'm going to ask him some questions later. I'm sure Chris won't mind me sharing this, but when we first started with working with Chris as a business, he didn't have a clear plan and metrics. So it's so important that you plan first before you do anything else. It's so important. And I often use the analogy that, if you suddenly decided you were going to enter the London Marathon in October, you wouldn't suddenly turn up on the start line having done no training. You'd have a plan. You'd work that plan so that you in the best condition possible to complete the London Marathon. But what's interesting is, if you ask most businesses, they don't have any clearly written down, articulated sales goals. And here's something that's more going. This is based on a piece of research that's been done by a company in the US called Objective Management Group, that's evaluated up nearly 2.2 million salespeople over the last 30 years. More salespeople, sales managers, and sales leaders don't have any written down personal goals either. So it is all about having goals. It's all about having a plan. So how do you do this? So I'm going to relate this to the 4 Qs of leads, or the 4 competencies of high performance business leadership. Now, whether you're a small business owner, you're a one-man band, or you're in the global space, all of these quotients apply, all of these competencies apply to actually building your goals and building a plan. So to be able to run a business and build sales goals and build a sales plan, you have to have a certain element of intelligence quotient. And that is all about day-to-day management, because managing your goals and executing those goals requires management. If you're leading people, where you've got a team of people and you're leading those people, you've got to have emotional intelligence or emotional quotient. And that's all about leadership. It's being in tune with your people, setting your people for success so they deliver. One of the key components, and there's a lot more talk about this these days, is the ability to adapt. And this is about strategy. And these days, strategy is linked to your goals. It can be linked to your personal goals as a business owner, as a leader, but you've got to be able to adapt. And here's something that I learned from a presentation that was delivered to our business in November last year. What made you successful in 2021 won't make you successful in 2022. So you've constantly got to adapt your business goals linked to your personal goals. Because if you're not constantly adapting how you sell, what you're selling, you won't survive. And then the last one, and this is where most businesses, particularly in the smaller end of SME, they'll deny they have to do this, but it's about sales quotient. And this is about sales. Well, most people actually have to sell, but went into business because they didn't want to sell. So you've got to have a sales quotient. You've got to understand what your sales goals are. Now, I know from dealing with a lot of businesses in the UK, people don't like talking about sales because they see it as a dirty word, but actually it's really important. But to be really successful in building a business and selling and having goals, you've got to have these 4 competencies. And if you're not as strong in one of them, then get people into your team who are stronger than you are. I'm sure there's a lot of people on the call today who are very strong in certain areas in their lives and in their business. So surround yourself with great people if you're not as strong in some of these areas. And interestingly, when you're selling, people who've got a high degree of emotional quotient and adaptability quotient will also be more successful, because in terms of emotion, if you can listen to people, then you're going to create new opportunities for your business, and you're going to listen to your clients more as well. So they are the 4 competencies of high performance business leadership, and they all fit into being able to set goals. Now, here's something that's really interesting, and if you want to write this down, please do. And here's a real nugget. Ask yourself, when was the last time you actually reviewed your sales strategy and your sales plan? And I also ask yourself, when was the last time you actually reviewed that with anybody in the business to see whether you were on track? And then my third question I'm going to pose to you at this stage is, what would you do if there was another pandemic? Would you be ready? Would you be capable of adapting and flipping your business model? Because it's all about adaptability. So where does this fit in? Where do some of these things fit in terms of building a goal-setting culture related to sales in your business, and also linking for high performance? And the reason that we talk about the importance of goals is it's all about building a world-class culture, even in a small business. Because interestingly, those businesses that are sales focused, they're really focused on winning clients. And what I mean by winning clients, it's winning clients in an ethical and a professional way, not at all costs. And as you'll see in a few moments, having goals is also about defining what types of clients you want, who you want to attract, who you want to deal with. It's not all about the money. So these things are really important in terms of defining your goals. So what I'm going to show on the next slide is what we call a high performance pathway. Now, most businesses, they will be in a phase where actually they're in what we call unstructured growth. And actually what they want to do is they want to go into consistent growth. But the reason they can't get consistent growth, and the reason that they can't go to smashing their targets, is because they haven't got a clear vision and they haven't got personal goals. And the owner doesn't know really where they're going to go to and head to. And by the way, some of these things apply in the big global space as well. So let's just take a look at what we call a high performance pathway. And on here, you'll see some steps for going from unstructured to planned growth. And as you'll see on here, what I'm going to circle here is what we call a sales plan. Now, a sales plan doesn't have to be a complicated document, but it is a document where, as the owners of a business, as leaders, as advisors, you can document your personal goals, you can document the business goals, you can document the target market within there, and you can also document all your KPIs. And the key thing here is that it's a document which you can use as a working live document within your business, and you can also use it personally. So it was talked about before, we do actually have one of our staff who's currently doing the degree in sales at Leeds Trinity, and Dylan Cowan. Some of you might have seen him on LinkedIn, but we have also done this with Dylan to get Dylan to set his own personal goals. which are then aligned to the business goals. And here's the key thing: most people who have personal goals require some element of money to be able to achieve those personal goals. So the key thing is that you can use some of these templates if you want to do with your own team to help you define the goals. And the other thing, which is a key factor of success, is that if you've got a team of people in your business, get them to articulate their personal goals for the next 90 days, the next 180 days, the next 360 days, so that actually you can help them achieve those goals. And that's the key thing. And that's what we've done in our business at the end of last year, is share all our personal goals with each other. And all those personal goals are then connected back to the sales plan and the growth plan of the business as well. Any questions at this stage? Okay, nothing. Cheers. Thanks, Oliver. So on the screen there, you can see an example of a one-page sales plan. And what you'll see right at the top, and again, like I said at the start, if you want to download a copy of this, at the end on the last slide, there is a link where you can actually download this. And you'll see here, we've got what we call the strategic growth intent for the business. And strategic growth intent is a goal of the business. It's what we're looking to achieve, or what this business is looking to achieve over the next 12 months or the next 2 years, and it's clearly set out. Now, working out your strategic growth intent or your goal helps everybody in the business focus. It really keeps people aligned so they don't go after the shiny new toy, and it keeps people really focused, and that's a really key thing. And again, what we do is relate that back to everybody's personal goals so they know whether we're on track, and that's everybody's role in the business. And you'll see there we've got things like the 2-year sales goals, targeted revenue. So I'm going to in the time that's available, I can't go through every step in here, but I thought I'm going to take you through some of the key things which will actually help you as well. So what are the things that are actually make up a really great sales plan? Well, the first thing is the strategic intent, which I've just gone through. Now, your strategic intent might be we want to increase revenue from all our existing accounts by 25% over the next 2 years. Your strategic intent might be to break into a new market sector or vertical. The strategic intent has got to be designed and agreed for by yourself. Okay, and I will share with you what is part of our own strategic intent. Part of our own strategic intent is to be a hub for SalesStar in Europe. So that's part of our strategic intent, and we've also got a strategic intent around the number of clients and how much revenue we want to grow by in 2022. One of the really fundamental parts, though, of a sales plan, linking it back to the goal of this presentation, is actually having clearly identifiable sales goals. Now, sales goals are actually the amount of revenue that you want to bring in over a fixed period of time. Generally, you probably set a sales goal for a 12-month period, and you can break that down by quarter and month. Now, even more importantly, it's also breaking your sales goals down into 3 key areas. One is how much revenue you're going to bring in from existing clients, how much you're going to increase customer spend from those existing clients, and how many new clients do you need to win, and what's the average order value from those clients as well. So having sales goals is really, really important. And then as we start to break this down in terms of, okay, we've got some goals, that's our revenue goal for this year, and that's our revenue goal for the quarter. But what are the key steps that we've got to take so we actually achieve those goals. So we're really now what we're doing is people will have goals, they'll have them written down, they might have them on an Excel spreadsheet, but actually now, what are the things that we've got to do? Because it's all very well having goals, and often people will talk about visualizing your goals and visualizing how you feel when you achieve those goals. But often what is forgotten about is what I call the daily grind of having to do the activities to achieve your goals. And I don't know if anybody's come across the author Mel Robbins, whose book I recently read, The High Five Habits, and she talks about people who want to run a marathon, and she says what they do is they visualize actually completing the marathon and getting the medal. And she says they visualize how great they'll feel when they run through the finishing line. She says what people don't visualize in their goal setting activity is how they'll feel at 5 o'clock in the morning when they've got to get up in the middle of January to do a training run, and it's absolutely bucketing it down outside. She says what you have to do if you want to really set out to achieve a goal, you've actually got to visualize the things that are difficult to do to achieve those goals. And this is where things like leading activity really come in, because if you know that to generate one new client, you've got to speak to 10 or 20 people a day, that is part of your goal setting. And having your leading indicators, leading activity, provides you metrics of data-driven management. And Charles before was talking about, having things that are data-driven. And just coincidentally, one of our clients is one of the largest data analytics companies in the space of supporting online purchases for online retailers. So we fully understand the value of data, particularly in the digital sales space. So coming back to your sales goals, understanding who you're targeting, and you could well have goals for your target market, and apart from your target market, who do you really need to speak to? So who's the target audience? And I've got a couple of bonuses here in the presentation where I'm going to talk about how you can do that. What are the problems you solve? So if people are buying your product or service, what problem are you really solving? You need to have what your strategic messaging is, and then your 90-day strategic priorities and a sales process. So this is what makes up a sales plan, and this is all linked back to having your goals. Any questions we got, Oliver, in the chat? Okay. So I'm going to build in a bonus before I come on and talk to Chris. Is Chris still there? So I've talked a little bit on the slides about having a go-to-market strategy, and this is linked back to actually setting your goals, because lots of businesses, when they talk about selling, and we're not marketeers, we're sales transformation specialists, but actually they have a bit of a scattergun approach to who they really want to speak to. So as you'll see in a moment, and I'm just going to mention this, when people say, what is it you do, Pete? I say, we work with growth-minded entrepreneurs, CEOs and business leaders who are typically frustrated about the amount of sales growth they're currently experiencing. So I know who we are targeting in terms of our target audience. So let's look at a bit about problems we solve and a go-to-market strategy linked to your goals. Well, if you're going to have a go-to-market strategy and you can define it, you've got to base it on what we call consultative selling strategy. And this is all about where you set yourself up as a trusted advisor. And it might be part of your strategic intent is perhaps if you're in a business or sector that's viewed as more transactional, and we do have some clients that operate in that sector, where actually you can differentiate yourself and you can become a trusted advisor. So here's a definition or our definition of consultative selling. And consultative selling is all about enhancing partnerships. So lots of people talk about features and benefits, and they talk about the features of their product, they talk about the benefits of the product. Actually, if your goal is to increase revenue, it's about focusing on being more consultative in your approach to those clients or those prospects. So consultative selling is about enhancement of client profit through either helping your clients or prospects increase sales or reducing costs. And in a moment, I'm going to ask Chris some questions around this. So that's your go-to-market strategy. And then the thing you've got to think about is, if you're targeting people, and this is what we do, is we think about, okay, if people decide to work with our business, and if people are going to decide to work with your business, what problems do I really solve for my marketplace? And this isn't about your products, but what problems can we really solve for them? Okay, so if somebody rings me up and says, actually, I would like to buy some sales training, the first question I actually ask is, we'll ask them some questions about their business and what are they really trying to achieve, and what's the problem they're trying to solve. Because actually, most people are not interested in your product; they're actually interested in the problem you're going to solve for them. And secondly, if you're solving a problem, why should they deal with you? So if you want to understand what your goals of your business are and your personal goals are, you've really got to think about what problems you're solving for people. So I've got time just to do this briefly before I come on to Chris, and I'm just going to talk briefly about strategic messaging, which we call unique value proposition. So a unique value proposition focuses on outcomes. Now, remember when I talked about the people talk about products and talk about features and benefits? This is where you can clearly demonstrate that you are different. And there are three key things that make up a unique value proposition. And again, you'll get this in the slides. One is focus on outcomes, support it with measurable data, and state a time frame that it's achieved in. So I'm going to give you an example now of a unique value proposition. So working with COOs, we've improved logistical costs by an average of 42% within the first year. Just last week, we worked with a similar business to yours where their savings amounted to £1.4 million. And this is all to get the fact that if you've got a unique value proposition or a UVP, that it's going to resonate with somebody that you're working with. So let's take a look at an example of using a UVP when making an appointment and commencing a meeting with somebody.
Pete speaking.
Hi, Peter. It's Penny from Alpha Corp. Do you have a moment to speak?
Yeah, a brief moment.
Great. Peter, I've been talking to a lot of operations managers like yourself who are concerned about rising compliance costs with the new health and safety laws. Working with COOs, we've been able to reduce these costs by between $150,000 and $200,000 within the first year. As a matter of fact, in a recent case, we helped a company in a very similar industry to yours to reduce their compliance costs by over 60%. So what I'd like to do is come on in and have a chat with you to get to know your operation a little bit better and hopefully determine whether we can offer you a similar result. But if after chatting with you, I don't think that we can help, I'll tell you. How does that sound? And as I said on the phone, we've been working with COOs like yourself who are frustrated with the cost of compliance. They're not really sure how they might better contain these costs. So working with clients in this area, we've been able to reduce costs by between $150,000 and $200,000 per annum. In a recent case, we've worked with a similar client to yourself, and we've been able to reduce their costs by $157,000 a year.
Impressive.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do today is just take some time to get a better understanding of your operation by asking you a few questions. Then I'll hopefully be able to give you an indication as to whether I can help and help you get a similar result here. But if I don't think that we can add value for your company, I'll tell you. How does that sound?
Yep, fair enough.
Great.
So just to remind you of where this sort of fits in, and then I'm going to come and ask Chris some questions. Think about when you're setting your goals for your business as part of your sales plan. Think about what problems you solve, and also think about what your strategic messaging is. Now, this has been a bit of a whistle-stop tour. So what I would like to do now is I'd like to invite Chris. Chris, are you there? Can you hear me, Chris?
I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. So, Chris, we've been working together for quite a long time now. Could you just share with us your own experience of why it's important to have a sales plan and why it's important to have some sales goals from your own experience?
I think you described it a little bit earlier, Pete. For me, it was all about stability in the business and having a bit of a roadmap I'm in a corporate side of the world, in quite a large PLC business. So, but still kind of entrepreneur in that business in a way where I started up a division that didn't exist in the business back in 2015. So essentially, I wanted to be able to have some, instead of ups and downs and roller coaster of a situation, I wanted to be able to predict what my sales revenues were going to be. As you can imagine, we put a lot of time into forecasting, which is one of the things that's important in the sales process, is doing forecasting, and that's all well and good and great. And sometimes in a large PLC that, if you're not really involved, which I am.
Sounds good. Can you hear him?
Chris, you've muted.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't know how much of that you heard, but forecasting is important for us in a PLC, and in some previous years I wasn't quite as involved in the forecasting as I am today, because I've challenged to be involved in that. And sometimes when that forecasts and sales plan and things get handed to you and you're not involved in that, it can be quite discouraging process. So for me, it was really just about being able to be involved and map out my strategy, map out my goals. And Pete challenged me to look at my personal goals as well, like he was saying earlier. You want to have a look at your personal goals, whether that's financial, your business goals, and then for me, challenging the business and getting a bit more consistency. And whereas it's very important for me, if I have a budget and I'm reforecasting all the time, that I actually hit that budget, that I hit that forecast. And I'm able to do that now from working with Pete and putting together some of the day-to-day activities in the process, which he talked about, which is, if you're gonna, I don't know, do 200,000 pounds revenue this month, well, how are you going to go about doing that? Well, you've got to make so many calls a day. You've got to understand your closing ratios. If that's 50%, you got to have X amount in the pipeline in order to get to that number. Does that sort of answer it, Pete?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I was going to ask you, how do you feel now that you've actually got a plan and you've got a clear vision? Because obviously, you're in a sector that initially was potentially massively impacted by the pandemic, because obviously a lot of your model was face-to-face training. But you for those of you on the call, Chris's business does a lot of training on how to people drive drive things like industrial diggers and excavators. So it's not the sort of thing that you can train somebody to do virtually. So how important was it at that stage that you had a plan and goals that you could stick to?
I think at that particular time, obviously, for face-to-face training, our business got shut down for a period of time. But there was, we were quite fortunate in the fact that a lot of our clients are key workers. So they were utility workers and construction workers, still, needing that training, and our clients came back relatively quickly and recognized that they're going to have to continue to be compliant with safety. So I think really what helped me during that period more than anything else is, having the mindset to understand working through. It was only a short-term thing, staying positive and continuing to work through and speak to clients. And, Pete reached out to me as an example and said, how's it going? How you feeling? That kind of thing. And I could model that back, that to my clients and say, hey, how's it going? How you feeling? I'm not asking for business. I'm actually just checking in with you. Is there anything we can do for you at the moment? And then those clients and prospects remember that now, that you were one of the few people that actually reached out to them and, had that integrity, and we're looking after them at the time when actually there wasn't any revenue or profit in there for you. And that kind of pays dividends today. If I'm honest, having the map, having it all, the process in place, and part of my strategy to grow next year, I'm going to grow the business by 8%, but I'm going to grow my profit by 28%. So that's quite a challenge. The way I'm going to do that, mapping it out, is, how are you going to go about doing that? Well, continuing with the activity, but we need to add people. So we'll add another business developer who actually started yesterday. We'll add another instructor into our business who starts on the 4th of April. And, so we got to put the tools in, the actual tools in place, the people in place to deliver that revenue and that profit.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you talk about growing revenue by 8%, but growing your profit by a much more significant number. And if I remember back to, I'm going back a bit, to one of our very first sessions when I came down to work and stuff, and I said to you, so where's your plan? And I think your words were, well, I actually don't know where next week's revenue is coming from. I think it's interesting for the audience. How were you really feeling at that stage when, we just signed up and it was really our first session, and we were, obviously a lot of that session was around setting some goals and planning, but how did it make you feel when you articulated that expression? Well, I don't really know where next week's revenues come from, which I'm sure some people on the call can resonate with as well.
Yeah, I think for someone like myself, Pete, you know how I'm a very, very hard worker, and I drive myself quite hard. So for me, it was embarrassing, really. You put a lot of time and effort into things, but actually, if you're not planning these things out and working a bit more smarter, and actually having someone to challenge you, to say, well, slow down a bit. You need to put these things in place before you can, do these, get this revenue, because you need to put these basic principles back in place. And I think when you're running around, especially when you're starting a new business, you're just running around like crazy and you kind of forget the principles. And that was important for me to get back to the principles, be humble, remember that, slow down, and actually put some pillars in place really to drive the business.
Yeah, and obviously we did quite a lot of work with your team. What's your biggest insight you can share from actually being a bit more in tune with your people? I mean, I talked about emotional emotions and dealing with your people. What's been the benefits there in understanding them and their goals as well?
Yeah, I mean, two things. I mean, you can literally do what you said earlier, sit down and understand each of those individuals, what drives them. And some people, it's a lot of salespeople, it is money, and that's fine. Put some goals in place for that person, and some we pay a quarterly bonus. So yeah, drive that person to drive the business essentially. But then also it's important for us, we take a second step, which Pete mentioned, is, doing some evaluations through the objective management group, so that, yeah, that's great to understand this guy's money motivated or this girl's money motivated, but a lot of salespeople are, but actually what areas do they need coaching on to be efficient and effective, and what's their mindset? Do they need work? And everyone does need some work and some coaching. So we use that to help us understand where people are really, and not from a standpoint of, hey, you're not very good at this area, and you're great at this area. Because interesting in the coaching, people think they're terrible at one area and they're actually really good in that area, or they think they're great in this area and they're not so great. So it's a good tool to work and coach those individuals, and I think they appreciate it because you spent some time with them, which is, I think we have back in the US and in the UK, there's a tendency to hire salespeople and that you just wash your hands of the whole thing and you go, well, I've hired a salesperson that's going to bring me another 250,000 pounds of revenue this year, or whatever it is. Actually, that's not the great idea, because you end up just turning those people over and over and over, and they don't stay around and they don't feel any, haven't given them any love really. You've just thrown them out there and said, produce this, and they're people. They're not, they're not mechanisms to revenue, which, like especially a large PLC, we would sometimes see that as add that person and get this, add that person and get this, but it's not quite that simple.
So we've got about 7 minutes left. So I was going to ask, has anybody in the audience got a question they'd like to ask Chris or myself directly? And then I'm going to share a slide with my contact details. There's a couple of assets, and I'm just going to shout out to everybody. Chris is our next guest on our Creating Sales Stars podcast. So I'll send everybody a link to it. It's been released on Thursday. So if you want to listen to some more insights from Chris on his journey as a sort of general manager and building sales, because Chris has actually got quite a small sales team, and his journey is really interesting. So it's a plug for you, Chris. But does anybody any questions before I share a final slide with our details? We're gonna. Is it okay so Robert's asked, is it okay to set extremely ambitious goals? So great question, Robert. So there are two schools of thought on this. People talk a lot about smart goals and being realistic. So if this helps, we actually have two plans in our business. So we have budget goals that we need to meet to generate profit for the shareholders, and I'm one of the shareholders in the business. And then we've got a stretch goal of where we really think we can take the business. And actually, I think, I've got two of my team listening to me, so they can probably nod a corner, but I think the team are excited about the stretch goal. But as long as the budget goal, Robert, is a bit stretching, but the stretch goal is super stretch. So I think that somebody once said to me, if your goals don't excite you enough to get out of bed in the morning with a skip in your step, they're not stretching enough. I think your goals should actually super excite you. Because otherwise they're not meaningful. And I know one of the things I did with Chris was, I think I challenged him in the very first session, and when I said that's your goal, I said you can do that in your sleep.
Yeah, I think it's like one of the goals that we have in our business is in order to get a commission payout, Pete, you have to hit your goal 100%, so that, or your profit, revenue, whatever it might be that you're aligned to, and then we stretch all the way up to 120%, so you get extra payout to go up to 120%. So this year I'll probably our fiscal year ends at the end of this month. So I'm trending and hoping to 119% of my goal for my commission. So that's it looks, when you see these stretch goals, they look, just baffles the mind. But I think you just have to focus in on a daily activity that you have to do to hit that goal.
Yeah, so it's a great question. How can you effectively separate your personal goals from business goals without getting confused, trying to avoid being ruled by your heart, where you can lose out on good business opportunities or success? That's a great comment, question. I'm just going to give a bit of a comment to that, if I can, Nikita. I think that the differences between personal and business, I think business and personal goals are a lot more aligned these days, because I think there are some goals that I've got personally that won't cost me any money, but they're about a personal passion of mine. But I think most things that I want to do, it needs some money. So I think there's got to be some form of alignment. And I think as well, depending on what stage you're at in your career or your business, you need other people to help you achieve those goals. You know, one thing we've done in our business is make the goals shared and hold each other accountable. So I'll share this with you. One of my goals last year was to be able to take half a day out to work on myself. So I have every Thursday afternoon where I don't work in the business. And part of that is where I go to a personal trainer and a physio and just go for a walk. But actually, my thanks, Nikita. You know, actually, my team will hold me to accountable on that. So if I ring the office on a Thursday afternoon, they'll go, "Why am I ringing?" So I think you can get people energized about their own success. I've got one of my team is sat next to me, Oliver, who keeps asking me, "Can he go and work in New Zealand?" So that's his goal. But I think you create a better business if the leader is empathetic and is listening to his team. You know, if you help people, if you empower people, you help them achieve their goals, then I think that's much better. And we've got, you know, right at the start of his journey, we've got Dylan doing his degree. You know, so I think you've got to listen more. I'm just going to share the last slide. I'm going to pass back to Claire if you want to sort of wrap this up.
Oh, thanks very much, Pete. Yeah, I'm mindful that people have got to get off in a minute, but thanks so much to Pete, to you and to Chris and Oliver in the background. I just wanted to say thanks very much for that. For those of you that are not aware, this session came about by vote almost. So we put out a call to see what network members wanted, and the request came in that we wanted something on goal setting. So we're really keen to meet the needs of the network. So if you've got any other suggestions, please do forward them in. We'll be sending around an evaluation after this afternoon. So please do include any information that you'd like to see at a future network. It's for you. It needs to be of benefit to you and your business, your organisation, wherever possible. So if you've got some things that you want to see at future network events, please do let us know. So Pete, do you want to talk us through this, or just thank you?
Yeah, I'm happy to do this. So if anybody wants to download the one-page plan, I think Tom's going to distribute the slides afterwards. But if you want to copy the one-page plan, and actually if you go to download the one-page plan, it also talks you through. There are some complimentary videos which show you how to complete the one-page plan and goal setting, which are done by our CEO, my business partner, Paul O'Donoghue, and Alex Chan, who's our head of global learning and development. We've got a newsletter with hints and tips. So if you click on the hyperlink in the presentation, it'll take you through that as well. And if anybody wants to reach out to me and have a chat, and then I've got one other offer as well, which I mentioned to Tom. So my business has adopted a charity of choice called the Greenhouse Sports Project, which is based in London, which is looking to open up in Leeds this year. And Greenhouse Sports Project works with disadvantaged kids to encourage them to get actively involved in sport. And as part of that, we are running a complimentary one-day sales workshop on, is it the 13th of April, Gemma? I think. On the 13th of April at our office in Huddersfield. It is complimentary, and I've got 2 places available if people want to reach out to me. The only catch is that if you find it of no value whatsoever, you don't have to pay anything. If you do find it of value, we'll ask you to make a contribution of your choice to the charity we're supporting this year. So I've got, if anybody wants to reach out to me or to Oliver or the business ops manager, Gemma, talk to me about that, and we'll send you the details of it. So that's my final comment, and hope everybody's found it valuable, and thank you very much for inviting us.
Great, thank you very much, Pete, and thank you all for coming along. Hope to see you very soon. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.